Andrew, I've been reviewing your LinkedIn and I mean, it's stellar. I was basically embarrassed not to do you injustice to highlight some past experience of yours. Could you please do me a favor and help me out a little?
Okay, well, I've had a very long history of doing things in this space, in the maritime transportation trading space. I started off my life many years ago as a shipbroker, and that led me to understand how things work in a very strange niche part of the world, which is towage and salvage. Then I did my exams for shipbroking. I became a chartered shipbroker, which is always fun to be. And then I moved on to be a trader and trading in damaged commodities and damaged vessels. So that took me all over the world. I learned an awful lot about the world of commerce and how things don't work and how they do work, more how they don't work, which is quite useful in the insurance world. I then went to work for the Thomas Miller, which is a manager of mutual P&I and insurance vehicles. So I looked after ship owners, then I looked after forwarders and agents and everyone in the transportation chain. So it was very interesting, and I spent a lot of time traveling the world again with that role, and also spent some time in the Middle East running the Dubai office for that company. So that was very interesting to see how that part of the world works. It's gone on to grow immeasurably since I was there, even. So I'm quite excited about that part of the world as well, actually. Then I came back to London and did loss prevention, which is a very interesting part of the insurance space. Moved off to work for Lockheed Martin. Did some work with RFID and tracking in the supply chain. Which, if we'd have had blockchain then, I wouldn't have been talking to you now.
When was that?
I would have been very different setup. And then came back into insurance through a shipping agency, and now working for JLT. So lots of different roles, but always in the same space, always understanding how trading works, how people connect within the trading space, the marine trading space. So it's a poacher, gamekeeper, poacher, and now maybe a bit of both. So it's an interesting background to have to come to this thing, but I think it's useful to understand a bit of how everyone needs to work. So that's me in a nutshell. Some would say I should stay there, but there we are.
No, thank you so much for this. It's extremely interesting, and I bet that in 30 years, men can see a lot of novelties, a lot of technologies, a lot of buzzes as well. But I'm specifically interested in what attracted you personally about blockchain. Like, how did you get excited about this specific technology?
Well, this again goes back to my earlier comment about the Lockheed situation. Mm-hmm. When many years ago, we were part of a European project, which a lot of people make fun of European projects, but actually they are quite interesting in research terms. And we were looking at how you do tracking and tracing of cargo across different modes of transport for mainly hazardous cargo in tanks. So that's quite a big issue for the EU. They want to make sure the regulations are right and the transparency is there. And we came up with our own special GPRS GPS tag device, which worked in blast safe environments. It was an amazing project. But we then realized that the actual problem that we were trying to solve wasn't really the tagging or the tracing or the tracking physically. It was actually the cargo documentation as it was handed off from one mode to another. And that led us to think about how we deal with that. And we looked at using email and SMS messaging and taking a sort of transparent pipeline across the forwarding space so that everyone could get the right documentation in the right way. But of course, unfortunately, the internet isn't really secure enough to enable us to transfer documents that we needed to transfer. So we kind of fell over a bit on that. Then Lockheed and I came up together with a project to do their RFID tagging, which again needed some more certainty around transformation or transformations actually, of information to do with secure supply chains for meat as well, which is very interesting given OriginTrail's very deep experience in the food space. So all those things came together, and then again, couldn't do it because of the internet not being secure enough, etc., etc. And then we looked at using centralized systems, using a thing called Bolero, which is active at the time, but it's very expensive. So of course we ran up against cost constraints. So that's why when Ken Lyon, my good friend from many years ago, came up with talking about OriginTrail and what you were doing, I thought, my goodness, this is it, isn't it? This is the thing we need. And it was a light bulb moment. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to meet the guys. And I was absolutely bouncing up and down as we have the cartoon character, Tigger. I was getting very bouncy about this thing that would finally solve my problem I've had for the last 20 years. And it does. And that's why I'm so keen about this. And that's why I think it will be amazingly useful to deploy this technology in that space. So there we are. That's me.
Amazing.
That's why I'm getting excited about this.
The cartoon character and everything that's like shares a lot of energy out there. But eventually you met Giga and Tomasz. I don't know if you have met Branimir, but I guess that you have been in touch with founders. So when you first met, could you describe me how it was? How was the meeting like?
Well, there was a very enthusiastic me and a very calm and cool and collected Giga and Tomasz. Oh, it was great. And they explained to me what they were doing and how they were doing it and what their ambitions were. And I just said, that sounds absolutely fantastic. That sounds absolutely right. And I couldn't think of a better thing to try and get involved with. And I said the same to them. I said, I really want to be part of this adventure because I think it's massively important to get it right. And the thinking that's gone behind OriginTrail and the way that you've approached the problem, as it still exists as a problem, is very is properly done, and it's been considered. So I think that really helps because we see a lot of people talking about blockchain in the market today, and we see a lot of strange articles saying that blockchain will solve every problem ever created. And
the silver bullet pitch.
Will increase world peace and everything. Well, maybe it will. I don't know. But anyway, hey, that's good. But there's not a lot of solid thinking behind a lot of these things. A lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon, are pretending that this is what we used to call vaporware. In the good old days of .com. It's vaporware, and I think a lot of people are getting a bit fed up with vaporware because they can't see something happening. I think with OriginTrail, you're seeing something happening, and it's working, and there are use cases, and I think that's really clever. So that's why I really wanted to be involved, and I think it's very important to have a proper connection with a bunch of people who actually understand what they're doing. For once, is quite handy.
No, thank you so much. We are delighted to be connected with you, to do conferences together. Just having this amazing relationship and exchange of knowledge and information is so valuable for our future development. And actually, it got me thinking when you were explaining this case before from the European project, is this challenge still persisting in the industry today, or what type of challenges could blockchain help to address in your field of expertise in your industry?
Right. Okay, so there's two sides of it. One, there's the insurance bit, which is what I do every day, which pays my mortgage, which is nice. And the other bit is the supply chain, which I'm connected to via the insurance side of things. So the insurance is a very difficult area to innovate in. It relies on a lot of different people doing a lot of things at different points in the train. And what we have is a slightly confused system that is not very efficient. And what blockchain allows us to do is to operate in a a more efficient manner some of the very intensive processes that require a verification. So we have a lot of people saying, is this true? Is that true? Is this not true? And it becomes a very intensive process where you're relying on lots of people saying yes or no at a certain point. And they're people, so people forget and people get it wrong. And people, unfortunately, are quite interested in not saying what they're doing because it might not help them in terms of premium payments, etc. So when we go into the blockchain environment, we create a verifiable point of truth, moment of truth, which is then able to be integrated to a smart contract. And that's the piece I'm really, really interested in the insurance side. Blockchain's great. Yes, that's fine. We know about that. But it's about smart contracts and integration. And that's where I think we can really score in that sort of area. So we get rid of a lot of verification processes and we get rid of a lot of conflict over information. And I think that's where blockchain really does sit very, very well. So I think I hope that answers your question, but I think that's where we are with that.
It's an amazing answer. It's such a mature answer. It's very evident that you are like hands-on in the industry now. But I wanted to ask you, like, when you are talking to your peers, to your colleagues at conferences or at work, do you think they understand blockchain? And like, what do you think, like, the state of notion, like the notion of the blockchain in the industry is right now?
There's a lot of misunderstanding and there's a lot of fear. And I think the fear comes from the misunderstanding. And I think what we have to do really, it's kind of evangelical behaviour really at one level. But we have a duty to explain to our colleagues what will and can happen as a result of implementing this technology so that it actually makes sense and in terms that they understand. And I found so many colleagues when I speak to them say, "Oh my goodness, blockchain! Oh no! It's all robots are going to take over the world." It's not. It's not.
Oh, this is the Industry 4.0, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they don't understand. So it's great, but it's not understanding because they're not intelligent human beings. They're perfectly intelligent. And when the blockchain system is explained in a correct way and unpacked in human language, then people say, oh, that's quite interesting. I'm actually more on board with that now. I had two conversations last week with my colleagues in the office about what the benefits are about this system, and they said, "Oh yeah, okay, we get it now. Let's think about how we can use it." So it was really interesting. So there's a lot of change that needs to happen in terms of people understanding, and we get articles in newspapers, and we get things on television, and we get YouTube feeds and all sorts of nonsense that talk absolute rubbish. And it drives me mental when I hate people talking about rubbish. Are we there?
Yeah,
no. We got it.
I share your opinion about like people talking rubbish. Yeah, that's sad. But as you said, like use cases help, right? If you have something tangible, if you can speak the industry language, if you're there with physical evidence, that helps. What else help?
I think the use cases are the most important thing. If you can demonstrate that the technology is deployed in a way that is accessible and efficient and credible, that's fine. I think a lot of people have been rather scared by this whole obsession that people have around Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is a complete red herring in English. We have this expression, it's a red herring. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any sense. It's part of the blockchain, but it's not part of our blockchain, if you like. And that's where I think it makes a nonsense of the whole process. So we have to kind of forget Bitcoin exists and talk about it almost as a separate thing that doesn't impact us. And the whole crypto story has been a bit tainted by the fraud thing, the hacking thing, and other bits and pieces that are not really relevant to what we're trying to do here. And that's why I get a bit fed up with that side of the conversation. And they all think that it's that all these people that know about Bitcoin or think they know about Bitcoin tell me, oh well, it's just like Bitcoin. It's a bit of a flash in the pan. It's a and I say no, it's not nothing to do with it. So I hope that is correct. I mean, I'm just
No, we've been hearing this again and again. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the state of media, state of industry, state of society, especially right in the last half a year. There has been a lot of skepticism, but
Yes.
as you said, like this pure applied side, how it can help businesses via smart contracts with ledger and everything. These are like good things that we can talk about.
Yes. They're good. They're good.
Right. I actually wanted to ask you for advice now. So you said
Okay.
twice already that use cases are extremely important. So my
Yes.
question is as following. What use cases OriginTrail should develop in order to be more successful in the industry that you are an expert in?
Okay. Well, we have a couple of ideas running which are not yet finally sorted out in terms of use case. So I don't really want to talk about them because they're kind of proprietary things at the moment. I don't want to give anyone an idea that they haven't already had. So apologies for that. But a couple of projects are running that we have got some ideas about. So, but a lot of it's to do with smart contracts. A lot of it's to do with the flow of information in the right direction. I think that's very important. So use cases around that, generic use cases that show us how this thing works. I think the farm to fork ideas are brilliant. And I think those are very relevant because people can actually understand this is what
and relate to them because it's still like the emotional thing.
Yeah, and I think that's very important. So I think those are very handy, even if they're not in the shipping maritime space. They are in people's consciousness. So I think that's really important. But I would like to talk about what I want to do, but I don't think I should because I haven't got it all finalised yet. But it will. What I'm planning to do, taking over the world, what I'm planning to do is quite a good use case in our environment, and I think it will advance the use of blockchain full stop. Even if we don't commercialize it, it'll prove that we can integrate certain things. So it's about IoT, blockchain, smart contracts, and insurance, all into one amazing mix. And I'm very excited about it. So,
that's contagious. That's contagious. You also got me so excited about this. I can't wait to hear next from you.
Yeah, I will tell you. Don't worry. As soon as I've got it sorted. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So for the use cases, it's just like what you're so experienced as a professional, and you and Ken, I'm sure that you sometimes talk about this. So, what is your personal take on adoption of blockchain by really big companies, but like huge companies, like multinational systems? Because, for use cases, we haven't seen plenty of those. And I'm sort of just asking for feedback here.
I think the big companies, if we talk about the big companies in my space, people like Maersk and other people like that, a lot of talk about it. I haven't actually seen completely what it's going to do. I know that there's enthusiasm, so that's fine. And their enthusiasm is infectious to the point where they will make everyone who deals with them use their technology, which is great. I'm not sure exactly what result it'll have. They have some ideas around efficiency, cost savings, that sort of stuff, which I agree with. I think they're fine. But we have to see how that plays out. But there's another bunch of guys doing stuff around the bills of lading, which I think is very useful. They are a little bit trying to get themselves sorted out with insurance side of things because there's some regulation around bills of lading, which is very complicated. And if they get that right, I'm hoping they'll get it right in the next couple of weeks. That'll be very interesting. But I think all these pieces add together, and I think the OriginTrail layer approach works really well because you can integrate things to that layer and you don't have to build everything yourself. So I think that's very clever because you're allowing people to actually integrate and to operate within an environment that is sort of application friendly, if you like. Whereas building something from scratch is too expensive and difficult. So I think those are things that need to be thought about soon in order to make the adoption more rapid, or rapidly make people adopt rapidly, if you like, not more rapidly. But
I'm very grateful that you pointed this out because this is exactly what we are hearing from the companies. So, changing people processes and softwares is super expensive, lengthy, and has friction. So, this is like our unique value proposition that we are not trying to revolutionize the entire company by bringing blockchain to it, but we are relying on the existing
That was a good
stuff.
expression we had at Lockheed, actually. We're not trying to boil the ocean, which is a very, very important thing to realise. If you do something about access, it's very important. It's like building a proper access to a railway or a motorway or a port. It's about access, and it's about integration smoothly and efficiently. There's no point building a port without a railway line to it or a motorway to it. Absolutely pointless. So unless it's just a transshipment port, but you have to do that, and those are the sort of thinking around this adoption. I think is very important to understand that it is not about building something and then just going, that's it, off you go. It's about finding the access points, and it's a bit like Lego. You can have all the bricks you like, but if you don't have one of those base things, the green thing, that's pointless because everything falls over because the carpet is not very well structured for Lego building. Yeah? So I found that out many years ago.
Another amusing analogy. Usually, my last question would be, what are you most excited about with OriginTrail protocol and our use cases? But since you don't want to tell us, I'm already familiar with that.
I'm very excited about the whole approach. I think the approach is considered, is careful, and it's not trying to be everything to everyone all the time. And I think that's very important. I think your focus has been very, very good. You've stuck to the knitting. You haven't tried to do everything all the time. And I think you're reaching out to people who are in different sectors, which I think is brilliant, because you're not trying to pretend that you know everything yourself. You're asking other people, what happens here, what happens there? And the questions you're asking are proper questions. They're not just, we thought this and we're going to do that. It's not. It's about, how does this work in this industry? How does that work in that industry? What can we do? Like you're saying today, what kind of use cases do you need to go forward? Where do you need to be with this? And I think that's brilliant. And it just shows how you need to approach these kind of problems. And it is still a problem, and it's still not perfect. And I think there's a long way to go. People complain there's not enough disk space in the world for blockchain. I don't understand that at all. I don't understand anything about that conversation. People complain that it's linked to the Bitcoin thing. Again, we need to completely remove that conversation. It's just, we need to understand integration. That's the word. And once that's done, and easy access, we're perfect. It's like when we introduced the Oyster card on the tube in London. Very good innovation, but it was difficult to get hold of to start with. And then they said, let's just use the contactless payment system. Fine, brilliant. Everyone now uses it, no problem at all. So there's lots of different ways that you can do things, but things evolve. And I think this is really important, that you are listening to the evolution, you're listening to the people, and you're part of that community, which is great. So there we are. That's me. I'm a huge enthusiast for this. I'm utterly enthusiastic. So there we are. That's me.
Wow, this is brilliant. My heart is singing. No, seriously, thank you so much for these kind words. I couldn't have said that in myself. And we also have some kick-ass advisors, such as yourself, in order to help us stay on the right path and to make sure that we have proper insights and signals what is going on in the industry, what the industry needs. So I ran out of questions. If you have something to add or to say, or to just say hi to our community.
Just to say thanks for getting me on board. I'm a huge enthusiast. I always think these things are brilliant. You have to put some effort behind it. You have to have those conversations, and I'm really, really keen to be part of that conversation going forward. So that's me.
Thank you so much. So are we. And again, super grateful to have you. Thank you for taking the time to do this interview. I'm sure it will be very popular with our community members.
Thanks, Maya. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Yes.
Ciao.
Yes. Ciao. Bye.